Last year, before the season started, I decided to do an NFL head coach hot seat rankings video. And I enjoyed doing it so much that I'm going to do it again because it's a free country, at least for right now. Nevertheless, I hope you guys can sit back, relax, and enjoy this year's edition of the video. Arizona Cardinals, Jonathan Gannon. Gannon's first year with the team went about as you would expect. They were terrible when he was hired, and they were terrible when he was in control his first year, finishing 4-13. But now they have Kyler Murray back for the full season and the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr., so there is something to watch them for this year, although I believe everybody knows that. And I also believe that the front office of the Cardinals understands that they are still in a rebuilding process, so I'm going to say that Gannon's hot seat ranking is a pretty solid 2 out of 5. Atlanta Falcons, Raheem Morris. Raheem Morris is a retread, but he's also somewhat of a rehire, but not really, because he was once the interim head coach of the Falcons back in 2020 when Dan Quinn got fired. He had 3 years coaching the Buccaneers. He had one 10-win season in 2010, but other than 2010, his career as a head coach has not been very good. And honestly, I have no reason to see why it won't be any different now, especially considering that the Falcons basically fucked up the quarterback situation with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix. But because he is a first-year coach, I'm going to say that the hot seat ranking is a 1 out of 5, but I don't see him lasting longer than 2 or 3 years in Atlanta, much like Arthur Smith. Baltimore Ravens, John Harbaugh. Harbaugh's been at this for 16 years now, and last year had the Ravens as the 1 seed and in the AFC Championship game at home. As we all know, he has a Super Bowl on his resume and a couple other conference championship game appearances. So there's no reason why, barring some monster collapse season this year, why the Ravens would even think of letting him go. So his hot seat ranking is like half a point out of 5. Buffalo Bills, Sean McDermott. We all have the little 9/11 memes about McDermott now, but the facts are is that in his 7 years as Buffalo head coach, they've won 64% of their games, but left a lot to be desired in the postseason. I thought that he might get fired after yet another early playoff exit last year against the Chiefs, but I think it's smart to hold on to him because, again, this was a team and a franchise that prior to him getting there in 2017 hadn't made the playoffs in the 21st century. So it's all relative, but I think as long as they got Josh Allen and the Bills continue to trot out great defenses, that they will be in contention every year, and really that's all you can ask for. So I think that his hot seat ranking, though, is, I'm going to say a 2 out of 5, 2.5 out of 5, because at this point it's no longer can you prove you can win in the regular season, it's can you prove you can win in the playoffs, and just one conference championship game appearance in his career is not good enough. But again, success is relative. There are plenty other teams that would love to have the success the Bills have had over the last 4 or 5 years or so. Carolina Panthers, Dave Canales. Now, normally for most first-year coaches, I'll just have a default 1 out of 5 hot seat ranking because we don't know if it's going to be good or bad. However, with the Panthers, there is a bit of a pattern in recent years with them moving on from coaches pretty quickly. In fact, over the last 2 seasons, they've had 4 different coaches. And if you expand that back a little bit longer, over the last 5 years, they've had 6 different coaches. And that's not including Canales, who was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator last year. Panthers owner David Tepper doesn't seem like a very patient man, so I'm going to say that despite not having any resume at all, and despite having this as his first head coaching job, I'm going to say he's at a 2 out of 5. And also because I think they're going to suck again because Bryce Young's terrible. So I think Dave Canales, his hot seat, is at a 2 out of 5. Chicago Bears, Matt Eberflus. This is an interesting one because the Justin Fields era is over, and I thought that Eberflus would be gone with Justin Fields, but apparently they want to keep Eberflus for their new guy, Caleb Williams, and so I feel like that might give him a little bit longer of a rope, but still, 10-24 through 2 years, and for as good as Caleb Williams might be, he's still going to be a rookie quarterback, so there's still a lot of flaws the Bears have, so I wouldn't expect anything other than another losing season, so I think they might give him another year or two, but I think his seat, I think it's a 3.5 out of 5. I think it's pretty warm. Cincinnati Bengals, Zach Taylor. Taylor's career with the Bengals without Joe Burrow under center is not very pretty, but despite just a 46% career winning percentage in the regular season as the Bengals head coach over the last 5 seasons, that Super Bowl appearance and AFC Championship game appearance in 2022 with Burrow goes a long way. So I don't see Taylor being replaced anytime soon as long as Joe Burrow can stay healthy, which, to be fair, has been kind of a question mark so far in his career. But in the 2 seasons Joe Burrow has started and finished, they've made the AFC Championship game at least under Taylor. So I think his hot seat ranking is about a 1.5 out of 5. Cleveland Browns, Kevin Stefanski. God, isn't he just a silver fox? Look at him. This will be Stefanski's 5th season, and he's had 2 successful seasons in his first year and last year, with 2 not so successful seasons sandwiched in between. Of course, his career and future is still tied to Groper Cleveland at quarterback, but what he did last year at the end of the season with Joe Flacco to to get the Browns to the playoffs for the second time in 4 years was nothing short of incredible. So I feel like his leash is pretty long. I'm going to give him a 1.5 out of 5 hot seat ranking. And no, it's not because he's handsome. Okay, maybe a little bit. Dallas Cowboys, Mike McCarthy. Again, this is where context is important because for a guy, normally when you've won 12 games, 3 straight years, and you have a Super Bowl championship on your resume, albeit from years ago, you get a lot of leeway, even though Cowboys in the playoffs haven't been that great under McCarthy. But we all know Jerry Jones, and we all know that I think a lot of people were somewhat shocked that McCarthy wasn't fired after that blowout loss to the Packers last year in the wild card round. So I'm going to say that McCarthy, good old Mike, I'm going to say his hot seat ranking 4.5 out of 5. If the Cowboys start slow this year, then I think he's going to be out of there. Denver Broncos, Sean Payton, another Super Bowl winning coach, just like Mike McCarthy, although Payton's Super Bowl win came even longer ago than McCarthy's and with a different team. Payton's first year in Denver was loud and didn't really produce many wins. In fact, the Broncos once again had another losing season, finishing 8-9, and now they jettisoned away Russell Wilson. And who knows what's going to happen, but the Broncos front office has invested so much money into Payton that I still feel like there's no way, even if the Broncos stink for the next 2 or 3 years, he's going to be canned. So I would say his hot seat ranking is a 2 out of 5 right now. Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell, the most well-liked head coach in the league right now, besides maybe Andy Reid or Mike McDaniel. Dan Campbell did the seemingly impossible. He took the Lions to the NFC Championship game last year, won 2 playoff games, has slowly, year by year, been getting better and better with team. Detroit is actually respectable now for the first time since I can remember, since Barry Sanders was there. So as of right now, I would say even though some of his calls in the NFC Championship game were kind of questionable on 4th down, I would say that Dan Campbell's hot seat ranking is a 0.5 out of 5 at the moment. Green Bay Packers, Matt LaFleur. God, he's so handsome, isn't he? Anyway, after starting off with 3 straight 13-win seasons with Aaron Rodgers, the last couple years have been about 500. Although the emergence of Jordan Love late last season didn't hurt, and the Packers won a playoff game over the Cowboys, which was hilarious, before losing a close one to the 49ers. LaFleur obviously has a very, very long leash and a lot of slack left, despite the fact that he has a losing playoff record. But I think him and Jordan Love are going to be together for a very long time, barring some untimely collapse. So I think LaFleur's overall hot seat ranking is a 1 out of 5. Houston Texans, DeMeco Ryans. DeMeco Ryans' first year as head coach really could not have gone any better, taking over what everybody thought was the worst team in the league and going 10-7, winning the division and a playoff game, and also finding a franchise quarterback in CJ Stroud. Now Stroud and Ryans are most likely going to be tied at the hip, so as long as Stroud is there putting up numbers and winning games, Ryans will be the head coach. Although you never know with the Texans. Remember, they did have, I think, 3 different coaches in 3 years before settling on Ryans, and maybe the Texans jumped too quickly ahead in their rebuild process, and now they're going to come back down to earth. We don't know that yet. We're going to find out in the field. But so far, as of this moment, right now, DeMeco Ryans probably a 0.5 out of 5 on the hot seat ranking scale. Indianapolis Colts, Shane Steichen. Colts got rid of the Third Reich, and they brought in the SS. And in the SS's first season, the Colts went down to the wire in terms of making the playoffs the very last week, the very last drive, really, and they couldn't get it done. They finished 9-8 to the Texans 10-7, losing to the Texans at home. It was pretty embarrassing. They did away with Gardner Minshew. We're now going to see Anthony Richardson, hopefully, for his first real season. But it was another mediocre year for the Colts, and Shane Steichen, I don't think really did anything that was terrible or ultimately praiseworthy. So I think that he's really in the same spot as he was last year. I would say he's in a 1 out of 5 right now. But if the Colts have a losing season this year, then his hot seat it'll get hot really quickly. Jacksonville Jaguars, Doug Peterson. Dougie P. Everybody fell in love with Dougie P. in Jacksonville after the first year when they went 9-8 and they won a playoff game, that magical comeback versus the Chargers, which is really not saying much. But anyway, they come back last year and they do the exact opposite of what they did in 2022, where they started out great last year and then blew it, finished with the same record 9-8, but missed the playoffs in what was supposed to be the next step year for them. Trevor Lawrence still hasn't become the generational quarterback everybody thought he would be. Now Peterson, because he does have a Super Bowl championship on his resume, is probably going to get a little bit more slack than some other coaches in this situation. So I think he probably has, if Lawrence stays about as bad or as mediocre as he's been, he has about 2 or 3 more years with the Jaguars. So right now I would say his seat's a little bit toasty. Probably put it about a 2 out of 5. Nothing extreme, but 2 out of 5. Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid. Gee, a guy who's won 3 Super Bowls in the last 5 years and been to 4 of the last 5 Super Bowls. Yeah, I'd say his seat is pretty cool. So 0 out of 5. Easiest decision on the list. Las Vegas Raiders, Antonio Pierce. Now, Antonio Pierce was the interim head coach last year for the Raiders after they fired Josh McDaniels, who everybody hated. So it's one of those things things where by association or just by comparison, Antonio Pierce going 5-4 in the 9 games he was the interim head coach made him look really, really good. We still don't know if he's fit to be a full-time head coach from the very beginning. It's just that, well, he's better and players like him better than Josh McDaniels, which is good, I guess, but it doesn't necessarily translate to a lot of wins, or at least it hasn't yet. And as long as Mahomes and the Chiefs are in the same division, yeah, it's going to be rough. But either way, I would say for Antonio Pierce, he had a winning record last year. All the players seem to like him, so I feel like his hot seat ranking, it has to be a 1 out of 5. I mean, even if they have a losing season this year, I don't think he's going anywhere. Los Angeles Chargers, Jim Harbaugh. Since he finally won that elusive national championship at his alma mater, Michigan, he immediately went back to the NFL, where he previously coached 4 years for the 49ers and won nearly 70% of his games, made 3 conference championship games and a Super Bowl appearance, but never won the big game. The hope is Harbaugh can help Justin Herbert take it to the next level with his consistency and really turn the Chargers around. Obviously, Harbaugh, all of his big contract money, they went all out to get him, so it doesn't matter how this year goes. I would say a 0.5 out of 5 is his hot seat ranking. He has a lot of clout there. Los Angeles Rams, Sean McVay. For a while there, it looked like McVay was going to quit after winning the Super Bowl in 2021 and then that disastrous 2022 season where they went 5-12, but they bounced back, the Rams did last year, to go 10-7 and make playoffs, and now McVay is still there like nothing happened, although the retirement of Aaron Donald might be a problem. Still, McVay is just 38 years old, and with 2 Super Bowl appearances and a ring on his resume, he rarely is going to have this job as long as he wants it, so I would say his hot seat ranking's a 1 out of 5. Miami Dolphins, Mike McDaniel. The funniest head coach in the league and one of the most likable head coaches in the league has actually done the impossible. He's made the Miami Dolphins fun to watch after decades of them being deplorably bad and also boring. He's led them to 2 winning seasons in a row and 2 straight playoff appearances, but he's still looking for that first playoff win, as the Dolphins have gone 0-1 in each of his first 2 years there. Last year, that dominant offense, it didn't translate into the playoffs, but the Dolphins, like I said, they're fun again. Mike McDaniel has made them respectable again. He's one of the younger, innovative minds in the league, so I don't expect the Dolphins to get rid of him anytime soon. So his hot seat ranking, even in the hot, humid Miami, is still just a 1 out of 5. Minnesota Vikings, Kevin O'Connell. His first year was a fluky good season where they had an unsustainably good record in close games and therefore finished 13-4, and everybody knew that regression was coming, and that's exactly what happened, in addition to Kirk Cousins getting hurt. Well, now Kirk Cousins is gone, and really, I don't think anybody really knows just how good of a coach Kevin O'Connell is. I just feel like he's just kind of there. Through 2 seasons, he's 0-1 in the playoffs. They just drafted J.J. McCarthy, obviously, so they're going to give O'Connell probably a year or 2 of slack to see if McCarthy's any good. But I don't know, he's just kind of blah. So I would say his hot seat ranking, I'll give him like a 2 out of 5. New England Patriots, Bill Belichick, Gerard Mayo. Wow. Patriots got rid of Bill Belichick after 23 seasons and replaced him with a former Belichick player, Gerard Mayo. Obviously, there's nothing to go on with Mayo as a head coach. He's never been a head coach before, and the Patriots are looking to start anew from their dynasty years totally now that Belichick and Brady are both now gone. So I would say his hot seat ranking is 1 out of 5, although I don't expect the Patriots to be very good, and I expect more of the same, 6 or 7 wins. New Orleans Saints, Dennis Allen. Now, Dennis Allen is one that I don't really understand how he still has a job, to be honest with you, because at no point in his coaching career, and he's been the coach of the Raiders for about a little over 2 years, he's been the coach for the Saints now for 2 years. He has a career win-loss record of 24-46, so 34%. He was fired from the Raiders back in 2014. He finally had a winning season last year with the Saints, 9-8, but he's supposed to be this defensive coach, and there's all of his teams always usually stink on defense. I would say that Derek Carr, quarterback, obviously the chances of you making the playoffs isn't great, so I think it's going to be another losing season for the Saints, and therefore I think Allen will probably be fired at the end of the season or during the season, so I would say his hot seat ranking is a 4 out of 5 right now. New York Giants, Brian Daboll. Everybody fell in love with Daboll after the Giants' fluke 2022 season where they won 9 games because defenses didn't realize that Danny Jones could run for a white quarterback, and that got them even a playoff win over Minnesota and Kirk Cousins, which isn't saying a lot, before they got destroyed by my Eagles. And then everything returned to form last year. They went back to being 6-11. Now it's kind of like, is Daboll a good coach, or was just 22 just a fluke year? I'm telling you right right now, 2022 was a fluke season. And it's not even, I don't know if Dable is a bad coach per se, but the Giants just still don't have a lot of talent on their roster. So at least offensively. So I would not expect, as an Eagles fan, I'm not afraid of the Giants. But the Giants, I think that Dable, his hot seat ranking's about halfway. He's 2.5. He could go either way. If it's another terrible season, I think he could be fired. But if he has another mediocre season, he's still gonna, if he has a mediocre season, he's gonna stay. But if it's another bad season, like a 3-14 or a 4-13 season, I think he'll be gone. So right now I'm saying he's 2.5 out of 5. Might be a little bit low, but hey, I'm a nice guy. New York Jets, Robert Saleh. Now Robert Saleh is going into his 4th year as a Jets head coach. His first 3 seasons were all losing seasons. The first 2 of those seasons were expected to be losing seasons. He won 4 games his first year, and then that improved to 7 games in 2022, and there was a little bit of momentum. And then last year, obviously, they were bringing in Aaron Rodgers, and there was all this preseason hype. Oh, these guys are Super Bowl contenders. And then Rodgers' Achilles blew in half 4 plays into the season, and they once again finished 7-10 because their quarterback, Zach Wilson, was terrible. But now this year, Rodgers is supposedly going to be back, and the pressure is really on Saleh to do something to at least have a winning record and get to the playoffs. I think he has one of the most pressure-filled roles right now. He got a pass last year for Rodgers being hurt, but I think he's used up all of his slack. So I'm going to say his hot seat ranking is at a 5 out of 5. Jets start off slow. With Rodgers, you could possibly see Saleh getting fired, in my opinion. Philadelphia Eagles, Nick Sirianni. It's ironic because in Sirianni's 3 years, he's had 3 winning records. He's made the playoffs all 3 years, including a Super Bowl appearance a couple years ago. He's won 67% of his games, but the end of last year was so terrible, and it just was so deflating that all of the staff got fired except for him, really. So now Jeffrey Lurie, the owner, is like, hey, I'm going to give you another shot, but if this is going to be another season where we're kind of mediocre, I feel like if the Eagles don't have a 2022 type season this year, then Sirianni's going to be fired. And that's a lot. That's a pretty high bar, but I think that, you know, when you're the only guy not fired from the previous administration and you're the head coach, a lot of it falls on you, fair or not. So I would say his hot seat ranking, I'd say it's about a 4.5 out of 5. Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin just signed, he had a contract extension. He's been with the Steelers now for 17 years. He never has had a losing season, which is something that he can brag about, I guess. Although the Steelers have not won a playoff game in 8 years. They've won just 3 playoff games since 2011. That 2008 Super Bowl win that Tomlin won is getting really, really dusty and alone. Steelers seem to be content with just being mediocre under Tomlin as long as they're not terrible. So, and we all know the Steelers, they've had 3 head coaches since 1969. They're not in a rush to make any moves, any drastic moves. So Mike Tomlin, whether or not you think he's a great coach or he's the worst good coach ever or he's the best bad coach ever, his hot seat ranking is still the same. It's a 1 out of 5. They're not firing him no matter how bad he does. It's just what the Steelers are. San Francisco 49ers, Kyle Shanahan. In the last 5 years, the 49ers have been to 2 Super Bowls and 4 NFC Championship games. They have one of the best rosters in the league, and Shanahan is well regarded as one of the best minds in the league. So yeah, the guy's hot seat ranking, 0.5 out of 5. Although it is kind of hilarious how his teams keep blowing big leads in the Super Bowl. Seattle Seahawks, Mike McDonald. The Pete Carroll era is officially over, and they've moved on to another defensive-minded guy with a defensive background. He was the defensive coordinator for the Ravens over the previous 2 seasons. He's only 37 years old this upcoming year, so if he ends up being good, then hey, they'll be there for a long time. Again, we don't know what to expect. We don't know anything except that he's starting fresh, so he gets a 1 out of 5 on the hot seat ranking scale. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Todd Bowles. Now, last year, I thought Todd Bowles was like a 5 out of 5. I thought he was going to be fired early in the year because Tampa Bay was just, I thought they were going to be terrible, but everybody's surprised. They lost the quote-unquote GOAT quarterback and actually did better, finishing with a winning record. Baker Mayfield resurrected his career, although they're still just a 9-8 team. They did win a playoff game over my Eagles, and they fought the Lions hard in the divisional round before losing. So it seems as though Bowles caught himself a little bit of slack, but I still believe that his career win-loss record of just 43% is not great, and he's a 500 coach with the Bucs, 1-2 in the playoffs. It's not like he has really a whole, we're not talking about a guy with 2 or 3 Lombardi trophies to lean back back on. So I think if the Buccaneers struggle and they stink again this year, which wouldn't surprise anybody, I think that Bowles will be fired. So I still think his hot seat ranking, still 3.5 out of 5. Still pretty toasty for me. The Tennessee Titans, Brian Callahan. Callahan spent the last 5 seasons as the Bengals offensive coordinator, and we all know Bengals had some success over that time, although it is to be determined how much of the Bengals' success and Callahan's success was due to having Joe Burrow, although Jake Browning did have a couple nice games in Joe Burrow's place last season. It was surprising for the Titans that they even fired Mike Vrabel. I know that a lot of people were surprised that Brazzer's dad got fired, but Callahan's 40 years old. He's been around the block. He won a ring as an offensive assistant with the Broncos in 2015, which is ironic because the Broncos won the Super Bowl in 2015 in spite of their offense, but I digress. Again, Titans, new head coach, 1 out of 5 on the hot seat ranking meter. I just hope that he's okay with being irrelevant because that's what the Titans are. Finally, we get to Dan Quinn for the Washington Commanders. He spent the previous couple years as the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys. For that, as we all know, he was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons for about 5.5 seasons. He had about a 500 record, and he was most known for getting a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl in 2016 and not being able to seal the deal. Obviously, a retread hire that was really just not inspiring at all. I think because of his past and because of the way, even though Dan Snyder's gone now, I think it's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride for Dan Quinn in Washington. As long as Jaden Daniels, if he doesn't pan out, it's going to be pretty rough. But I think if Jaden Daniels does pan out, hey, who knows? Maybe Dan Quinn will actually win a lot of games. I don't fucking know. But I'm not particularly enthused by this hire, although as an Eagles fan, I don't mind it. I'll say his hot seat ranking, 1.5 out of 5, just because everybody will always be thinking about the 20-3 blown lead in the Super Bowl with Quinn. And rightfully so. I mean, god damn it, did you really? I can't even talk about it. I'm sorry.